Right, let's have a look. New potential Evoker Spec data mining findings part 2. So, before we start on this, let's have a little moment just to remember where we are in this story. So there was some data mining in the first 10.1 PTR, which was a quest. And this quest said Evoker only, so not even Drakthir only, just Evoker only. And it said that when you log in, you get a toast that says third specialization remembered. And then the quest itself isn't anything special, but does involve you waking up and fighting Adamanthia, who is the dragon that you find in the Forbidden Reach in this patch, who basically created the Drakthir on Neltharin's orders. And who then, on Neltharin's orders, siphoned off the Black Dragonflight magic from them. There is this thing, and we've talked about it a lot. We've talked about it a lot on this channel, and, you know, creators everywhere have done as well. And I really want to have something else it could be. I really want to be like, no, fam, don't get excited. Don't get your expectations up. It could be anything. But the more you look at it and the more you read it, it kind of couldn't be. You know, so all we've got really is, well, maybe it's just cut content. Maybe it was just something that was put in there for an experiment or something. But the words are very explicit. Third specialization remembered. And it's honestly very, very difficult to imagine it being anything else. So, like, the only other thing I could possibly imagine that it would be would maybe be like a Green Fire quest. The Green Fire quest for Warlocks, you know, back in Mr. Pandaria, saw them go through a little quest line, a very long involved quest line actually, quite hard at the time, and unlocking a visual effect for their spells that made all their fire go green instead of red, you know? So maybe there's like some Black Dragonflight / Shadow Flame effects that will go on to the spells for the existing 2 Evoker specs, maybe. But even then, with the wording saying third specialization remembered, it literally feels more likely that it is actually a third spec. It's been, someone said in chat the other day that it could be the quest line that unlocks Drakthir playing as different classes, which we know is something that is going to happen eventually. When that was brought up in chat, I was like, yeah, that sounds actually like it could definitely be that. But then I went back and read it again, and it says Evoker only, not Drakthir only, which would suggest that it is for something specific to Evoker rather than unlocking other classes for Drakthir. Now, I know Drakthir can only be Evoker at the moment, so the words are basically interchangeable right now, but I don't know. If it was to unlock different classes for Drakthir, I would imagine it's saying Drakthir only, not Evoker only. Does that make sense? Maybe it's April Fool's? Well, no, I don't think so. I feel like you don't put something that everyone wants as a joke in data mining, right? And then go, haha, psych, no. You put something weird that people wouldn't really want. Making it Evoker only would make sense because non-Evoker Drakthir would need to unlock the others. Exactly. So, here is an update, apparently. I hope it is an update now, not just a psych. Let's have a look. If you haven't read it yet, this post is an update to part 1 based on evaluating the differences between PTR patches 10.1 and 10.1. Right. As before, this post comes with a big warning. Everything in here is purely conjecture and just interesting things I have found in the PTR build. It does not mean anything about a third spec is confirmed, and this could all be a big prank. I mean, it's not a prank, but if you are a YouTuber and you're quoting this post, please make sure your audience is aware of that. I feel like I've already done that. With the warning labels out of the way, let's start off with something fun. This spell was in previous builds, but from the lack of cooldown and other features, it looked like an NPC spell. Now it looks more like a balanced player ability. Emerald Infusion. Infuse yourself with Emerald Power, healing yourself for 20% and 10% of your maximum health over 10 seconds. Emerald is a prefix to a lot of our green spells as evokers, and this reads like a basic tank self-heal. Empowers an ally, increasing their damage done by 25% as a prowess. No cooldown, so big old warning that this spell is likely an NPC spell, but interesting about boosting and the Azure cooldown. Okay. Iron Roots. Raising their shield, the Drakthir protects their allies within 10 yards, reducing their damage received by 90%. Drakthir and Shield mentioned in the same sentence, without the word cannot user in between. Again, big old warning, as we already know, there is a tank Drakthir NPC in the game, and this doesn't have a cooldown, so it may be that. I mean, it would definitely need a cooldown. And also, again, if this was from a third Evoker spec, you'd expect it to say Evoker and not Drakthir. It just doesn't make sense to have the tooltip, even if at the moment only Drakthir can be Evoker. It doesn't make sense to say Drakthir and not Evoker. This is 100% an NPC ability. It's referring to a specific Drakthir. If Drakthir get a third spec, Demon Hunters will go full emo. Oh, yeah, that's what's going to make Demon Hunters full emo. Wow, I can't wait for Demon Hunters to go full emo. I wonder what that's like. Can we confirm no Evoker talent mentions the word Drakthir at the moment? Oh, I mean, I can't confirm it off the top of my head, but I'd be very surprised. No, it's only ever... No, they're all going to say Evoker. I'm going to check, but I'm going to waste my life. I'm going to waste my time. I'm really kill the momentum here, and I'm going to check. But I'm certain that they would all say Evoker. No, nothing. Yeah, so, no, again, that is 100% an NPC ability. And it's worth mentioning that all Evoker spells have the name of the flight school in the corner of their ability as well. So, Spirit Bloom says green in the top right-hand corner. Echo says bronze in the top right-hand corner, etc. And none of these do. I'm inclined to think these are probably NPC abilities, particularly the 90% damage reduction one. That sounds like the kind of thing you put in a scenario because you don't want your players to die in the scenario. I checked on Wowhead, no Evoker talent mentions Evoker or Drakthir. Yeah, this is 100% an NPC ability, and I would think that even if it didn't say Drakthir, but that just confirms it. The real meat, though, oh good. Spell Empower stage has 36 new entries in it. This table currently has 111 entries in total, with all the previously known spells linking to empowered Evoker abilities, with the exception of one ability that empowers a user's jump and is related to another questline. Annoyingly, they all link to a spell ID of 0, so in essence they're just blanks. They do, however, have a similar setup to other Evoker spells. Each line represents a different stage of the Empower bar, with stage 0 being the grey bit that is not empowered. Both current Evoker specs allow for a talent to be taken which increases your Empower bar by 1, and you find most of the current Empower spells have 5 entries to take this into account, but none of the new entries reflect this. As well, most of the current Empower spells, so what that means is that suggests that these spells aren't new spells for either of the existing specs, because if it's a spell for one of the 2 existing specs, they would need an option to take it up to 5, and none of these do. Could this be boss abilities for the 3 baddies? Very good shout. As well, most of the current Empower spells are 1,000 milliseconds in stage 0, then 750 in further stages, but the new spells are 750, 500. This can imply a spec which doesn't have Empower stage +1 stage talent available to it, empowers quicker for no clear reason. There's a few other things too, but I'm going to need time to pick through. Might be a part 3 later on. That is interesting. But you bring up a very, very good point. Would a boss need to empower their spells if they wanted it just to look like a Drakthir? It makes sense that they would program that in. I mean, that is interesting. The really compelling thing was the tooltip and the quest text. So I'm not so compelled by this, honestly. This is interesting, but it's nowhere near as compelling as the quest text, in my opinion. But in the context of the quest text, it is interesting. 36 new entries, which would be like 5 new spells, 6 new spells. But what is weird is that these things are found now and not before. I mean, if they were failed experiments prior to 10.0, they would not add them now, would they? That's a very good point, Marin. Wouldn't there be more PR and more advanced testing for feedback on a potential third spec and not so much hidden stuff? Well, it doesn't have to be coming in 10.1. In fact, it would be, if they were going to do it, it's far more likely, in my opinion, if it were to come in the 10.1 cycle, far more likely that this is being lined up for 10.15 or 10.17. We've already seen that the 07 patches are quite Well, the reason I don't think they would put it in, no, I don't think they'd put it in 10.2 or 10.3 either, because what you're doing then is you're introducing a new spec a week before a new raid launches and a new season starts. They're far more likely to add this at the end of a previous season than the start of a new season, in my opinion. You wouldn't add a new spec a week before a raid launched. So far more likely this is for 10.17 or 10.27 or 10.37. Which is why they're probably, like, it makes sense to me that they would hold off the hype for it until 10.17 is on the horizon. Like, I would bet that this would be coming in 10.17. That seems like the most obvious place to introduce a new spec if you're going to do it. You know, where the season is basically wound down and you've got 8 weeks to put it out there, get it tuned, get people playing it. So that's why they wouldn't have announced it. I don't think it's going to be a surprise 10.1 thing when we log in, but it might. But I think they'll probably announce it for 10.7, 10.17 if they do. You know, that would be my betting. And honestly, at this time, it's not feeling certain by any means, but it's not feeling kind of ridiculous to talk about it. I think if someone thinks that there is a new spec coming, I don't think they're being silly. I don't think they're being ridiculous. I think they're being quite reasonable with the evidence presented, honestly. You know? And we predicted the Dark Ranger stuff with evidence that was less compelling than this, but which I thought was compelling enough to make a pretty, like, solid prediction that Dark Ranger stuff was coming. And that turned out to be right. Yeah, and Blizz are being pretty experimental with how they're kind of structuring their content in this expansion. And, you know, they are, to a certain extent, following a rule of cool. Everyone talks about, Afrasiabi's rule of cool. So he'd only ever think of story that was good in the moment and without thinking about any of, like, the fallout and stuff like that. But Blizz have been following a rule of cool for game mechanics in Dragonflight. This would fit that. A new spec just because. And because it fits in the story. And it does fit in the story as well. It wouldn't be coming out of nowhere. Like, the idea of the Drakthir unlocking some more power and a new spec is woven into the story right now. And yeah, can you imagine the hype? I don't think it's unlikely, honestly. If I had to put money either way right now, I would probably say yes. That's where I am. And you know me, man. When you first showed me that quest in the 10.1 data, I was like, fuck off, that's fake. Instantly. What if it's not a tank? There would be riots. Well, yeah, okay, fair enough. There's still lots that could go wrong with the idea. I still think there's a possibility it could be like a green fire thing, but I think the evidence points more to it being a spec. Yeah, it's definitely not fake. So yeah, there we go. Interesting. We will definitely, like, as well as everyone else on the internet, we will be keeping our eyes firmly on this one.